All right, let's jump right in and talk about snap judgments. We all make them probably thousands of times a day, and we don't even think about it. But what if I told you that gut feeling, that flash of intuition, is actually a kind of cognitive superpower?
I mean, it's the age-old question, right? We're always told, don't judge a book by its cover, but our brains just seem to be wired to do exactly that. Well, today, we're going to look at the science that suggests that, well, sometimes maybe you can.
And there's a name for this. It's called thin slicing. You might have heard of it from author Malcolm Gladwell in his amazing book Blink. It's our brain's wild ability to find patterns and make pretty solid predictions from just a tiny sliver, a thin slice of information. But listen, this isn't just some catchy pop psychology buzzword. There's some really remarkable science that shows thin slicing is a real and genuinely powerful part of how our minds work. So, let's go back to 1993. It all kicked off with this really groundbreaking study by two psychologists, Nalini Ambady and Robert Rosenthal. They wanted to figure out just how accurate our very first impressions of teachers really are, and their method was kind of genius. So here's what they did. They showed a group of students 3 silent video clips of a professor they'd never met before. Each clip was only 10 seconds long, and based just on that tiny bit of info, the students had to rate how effective they thought the teacher was. Seems simple enough? Okay, but here's where it gets absolutely wild. They did the experiment again with a whole new group. But this time, they chopped those clips down from 10 seconds to an almost impossibly short 2 seconds. I mean, that's literally just a flicker. And the result? It's kind of mind-blowing. Those 2-second ratings were just as accurate, just as on the money, as the final ratings from students who had spent an entire semester in that professor's class. Let that sink in. 2 seconds versus a whole semester. How is that even possible? And this isn't some weird thing that only happens in a lab. We are doing this all the time. Think about it. When you're trying to pick the fastest checkout line at the store, that's thin slicing. Swiping left or right on a dating app, that is pure thin slicing. Getting a whole vibe from someone just by their handshake? Yep, that's it in action. All right, so now it's your turn. We're going to put your thin slicing skills to the test with a real-world scenario. Let's see how your instincts stack up.
So picture this. You're in a movie theater over in Belgium. The lights are low, you're ready for the movie to start. You know the feeling.
But here's the catch. The theater is almost completely full of 148 tough-looking, tattooed bikers. We're talking leather jackets, stern faces, the whole 9 yards. The vibe is, let's just say it's pretty intense.
And just then, a completely unsuspecting, normal-looking couple walks in with their popcorn. And you can just see the look on their faces change as they scan the room. They go from excited to, well, terrified. And of course, you know how this goes. There are only 2 seats left. And where are they? You guessed it, smack dab in the middle of this huge sea of bikers. The tension in the room is just thick. Everyone's watching. So the big question is, what would you do? I mean, really? Do you turn around and walk right out? Try to find a spot on the stairs? Or do you brave the crowd and take those 2 empty seats? Make your snap judgment right now.
All right, you got your answer locked in? Let's find out what actually happened, because this is where our instincts can get really, really interesting.
After this moment of pure hesitation, the couple, they make a decision. They pull it together, they show some serious courage, they walk down that aisle, and they sit down in those 2 empty seats. And the theater is dead quiet. And then the whole place just explodes into cheers and applause. The bikers are smiling, they're clapping. The entire atmosphere just completely flips on a dime. And then the bikers all reach down, pull out ice-cold beers, and start passing them to the couple, who are just totally shocked. The toast? That calls for a Carlsberg. As it turns out, the entire thing was a commercial, a social experiment to challenge our own ideas. I mean, that ad is just pure genius. It works because it uses our own thin slicing against us. It sets up a scene that our brain immediately codes as danger based on stereotypes, and just when our snap judgment is made, it pulls the rug right out from under us.
But this leads us to a really, really important point. That initial fear the couple felt, and honestly, the judgment a lot of us probably just made, that's the other side of the coin. That's when this rapid cognition goes from being a superpower to being a pretty serious problem. Because here's the fundamental tension, right?
Thin slicing is this super efficient mental shortcut that helps us get through the day. But it's also the very same engine that powers our stereotypes, our implicit biases, and our harmful prejudices. It's a total double-edged sword.
And this leads to a pretty powerful question. Have you ever been in a situation where you were so aware of how other people were seeing you that you felt your color? For a lot of people, this isn't just some thought experiment. It's a daily reality, and it's driven entirely by the snap judgments of others.
So what's the bottom line here? First, we know thin slicing is a real and incredibly powerful tool. We also know it can be spooky accurate. But, and this is the big but, as those bikers showed us, it's also super vulnerable to our biases and our stereotypes. The key isn't to stop making snap judgments, because we can't. The key is just to be aware of it. Knowing this is happening is the first step toward making better and maybe fairer judgments.
And that leaves all of us with one final question to chew on. When you really look at your own life, your own quick decisions, are your snap judgments a helpful shortcut that serves you well, or have they maybe become a harmful habit that could use a second look? It's definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.